He is a Maryland man.
Come on.
What I will tell you
is an El Salvadoran citizen. He is not a Maryland man.
All right, finally somebody is calling it out. Ever since the media has referred to Kilmar Obrego Garcia as the Maryland man, more and more media sources that have to do with deportations or anything illegal immigrants, we're starting to see less and less facts about the story and more misrepresentation. You really have to dig into the stories to get the full facts. Now, we're going to start with this clip from Scott Jennings calling out, why are we still referring to Kilmar Obrego Garcia as the Maryland man?
One of the issues that Donald Trump is really under the water, probably his worst issue, is the Maryland man who is in El Salvador right now. It's something that...
Maryland man?
He is a Maryland man.
Come on.
What I will tell you
is... He is an El Salvadoran citizen. He is not a Maryland man. He is an illegal immigrant living in this country illegally for 14 years.
You can say whatever you want to say, Scott, but the American people...
This is why the polling is the way it is, because we're lying. We're lying.
We're not lying. The American
Scott,
people...
the peace orders were in Maryland. Guys, he was beating his wife.
The American...
Even though they have been saying that about him for weeks, that is not penetrating, and Americans are just misled, and that's why they don't like how Trump has handled this?
He has been saying that for weeks. And what has the entirety of the national news media been saying? He's a Maryland man. He's a mild-mannered suburban father. We have lied our rear ends off about this case. He is a El Salvador illegal immigrant. He came to the country 14 years ago illegally. There is a ton of evidence that he is involved in gang activity. There is a ton of evidence that he was involved in human trafficking.
Now look, I cover this story 24/7. I am always looking for new updates on this story. The more evidence that's been coming out about Kilmar Obrego as far as who he's been chilling with, who he's been caught with, his dealings with his wife, we are seeing less and less updates or statements from Democrats talking about Kilmar Obrego.
Let me just say, I mean, the 100 days, there's never been a president who has botched the first 100 days of his presidency more than Donald Trump has. And you don't have to take that as a subjective view. It's the view shown in scientific polling of the American public. The public is deeply against what Trump is doing. The Pew poll that came out this week, he's minus 19 points underwater in terms of his approval rating. If you ask the American people about what they feel about his handling of every single issue that you can poll on, he's underwater on every single one of them. And so he's been very radical in his first 100 days, and I think we knew that would be true, but I don't think we'd know that he would turn the American public, including a large portion of his own base, against him so quickly. The public would be willing again and again and again to go protest and say no and rise up against him, that he would fare so uniformly disastrously in court.
Now remember, the point of this video is to show you guys the misrepresentation of the media. Scott Jennings is calling this a blatant lie, and Rachel Maddow is saying every single point about Donald Trump, everything is bad. Americans don't agree. Go look it up. Even the Pew Research Center is saying this.
Deport all undocumented immigrants. Voters favoring the government trying to deport all 11 million of them. Back in 2016, just 38% of voters wanted the government to try to deport all 11 million undocumented immigrants. Compared to where we are in 2025, 56%, the majority. The American people have come a long way on this issue, much closer to Donald Trump, and I think that's a big part of the reason why Americans are increasingly saying the country is on the right track when it comes to immigration policy, and why Donald Trump's net approval rating on that issue is in the positive.
Wait, hold on. I'm really confused because Rachel Maddow was just telling me that every single person hates every single thing about Donald Trump on every single policy. Now, the hilarious part about this clip right here, to give you the full context, CNN played this segment to show everybody that Americans want deportations when Senator Van Hollen did his initial first trip down to El Salvador. I really truly think CNN was trying to help Democrats here and let everyone know you might not want to go to another country talking about deportations because Americans want this, but I digress.
So the judge referenced Kilmar Obrego Garcia in his ruling, but in this case, the government is not admitting that it made a mistake. Let's talk about the differences here in both cases.
Yeah, the government in this case, Kira, is not admitting that they made a mistake, as you know, despite the judge in this case, who is a Trump appointee, ordering the government to facilitate this man's return back to the United States. Now, to break this down a bit,
Now, here's what's so fascinating about all of this. This is even bleeding into our court systems because a second judge has ordered somebody named Christian back into the United States, where the judge is saying he was wrongfully deported from the United States, even referencing Kilmar Obrego. And remember, a lot of Democrats say, there's no evidence for Kilmar being a criminal or anything like that, but you'll notice when it comes to Christian, they hardly talk about the point where he was caught or busted with cocaine. You really have to dig deep to find anything that has to do with Christian or cocaine in the same sentence as far as this story. But again, a lot of this is highly misleading. And if I play you that full clip from ABC, they're not even going to talk about Christian and cocaine, even though it's their own news sources.
Problem is that the right wing, hello Scott, has taken advantage of this situation, I think, quite cleverly, quite wisely. They've played into a weakness.
What situation?
The situation of media being under attack. And so they've created a situation where...
You've almost got it. Keep going. What the right wing is taking advantage of is finally the American people saying enough is enough. They're tired of feeling like the mass media screens out one viewpoint versus another in political coverage. They're tired of media institutions favoring one party over another. They're tired of narratives over factual stories. If I had any advice for 60 Minutes or anybody else, it would be just cover the news and try to be fair about it and stop putting your finger on the scale, especially during campaigns.
You're talking about the old mass media myth that you could have this thing that was in the middle. The Walter Cronkite saying, that's the way it is, when it wasn't for many Americans the way it was. When people were pissed off.
But people back in those days trusted the media, did they not?
No, they just couldn't be heard. Because there was no two-way. Now we have the internet.
Look at the Gallup polling. It was here, and now it's here. It's fallen off of a cliff.
Yeah, we do have that Gallup polling about trust in media. And now, as in recent years, and let's be honest, Scott, a lot of this is driven by the rhetoric on your side of the aisle.
I mean, it's not. You think it's driven by the rhetoric and not the performance?
Absolutely.
But my point is this: if you're CBS or any other news outlet, the reason that you have lost trust ought to be obvious to you, and the way to fix it also ought to be obvious to you. And it has nothing to do with Donald Trump and everything to do with the product. Just try to make a better product that appeals to more people. And the way you appeal to more people is by not crapping on half or more than half of the country because of their values and political viewpoints.
I think that is
what you'd end up with in that press room then is, and these are my words, the freak show that Trump wants. Trump tries to devalue media. Why should we value his freak show there? Leave it to the freaks.
I think calling them freaks.
I don't think there's any disagreement on that, by the way.
I mean, he called these new media sources the freak show. They're not freaks. They have audiences.
Some of them are.
They have audiences, and there's a reason that they're thriving is because people are starved for information that they think they can trust. They're not freaks. They're filling a need in this country, in my opinion.
Right. Now, one thing I want to say is this. There also seems to be this silent majority of Democrats not even commenting or saying anything about these judges or deportations or anything. However, there are some members of Congress who finally are speaking out and actually admitting, you know what, Democrats, we may have made a mistake.
All of that said, and that is important and not to be ignored, yes, we did a poor job of securing the border, particularly on the asylum laws. I don't necessarily agree with everything that Mr. Homan said there, but certainly the asylum laws were wide open, and people took advantage of that. And President Biden didn't do enough to secure the border. On the larger question of what Congress wants to do, problem is we can't get a compromise. Toughen the border, but also we've got Donald Trump blocking refugees, taking away temporary protective status. And also a number of us believe that there are a lot of people in this country, undocumented, who should be allowed to stay. They have been a vital part of our economy. They are vital parts of our community. They are husbands, wives, mothers, fathers, working, paying taxes. We have depended upon their labor for decades. And to rip those families apart and send them back to countries that in many cases they don't even know, we believe would be wrong. So Democrats want pathway to citizenship for some undocumented immigrants. And then a lot of us are wide open to talking about toughening the asylum laws. and getting to greater security. But that inability to compromise on that issue is the biggest thing that has blocked Congress acting.
Now, look, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to keep some tabs on this congressman because the younger generation of Democrats who are in the party, they want pathway to citizenship for literally pretty much everyone. And when you have a Democrat going against that, let's just see what happens. That's all I'm going to say.
I mean, when you look at the associations with this violent Venezuelan gang, Tren de Aragua, and this person that they harbored in their home, he was showing signs through clothing, we were told, tattoos. There was evidence through voice messages and text messages of his association to TDA. So what charges will Cano and his wife face, if any?
So Judge Cano, soon to be former Judge Cano, got his charges were just unsealed. He's charged with obstruction. He admitted post Miranda. He took one of the TDA members' cell phones himself, took it, beat it with a hammer, destroyed it, and then walked the pieces to a city dumpster to dispose of it to protect him. The wife also is charged with destroying evidence. Sandra, not only that, this TDA member, and he had on a necklace that said kill, something about death. He had tattoos all over him. He also had on his cell phone pictures of two decapitated victims, decapitated, gruesome photos. And he was sending them out, and whoever he was sending them to was sending back saying, hey, you need to be careful. You shouldn't be sending these. You shouldn't be texting these photos out. Not only that, these two, the judge and his wife, gave him assault rifles that belonged to their daughter. That's what they're charged with. In the criminal report affidavit, he goes to a shooting range with these assault rifles, with a suppressor, with other known TDA members, and they're shooting. This is the last person that we want in our country, nor will we ever tolerate a judge or anyone else harboring them.
Now, here's what I find fascinating. Again, a simple observation. When this case initially came out, or the story, you hardly heard any Democrats talking about this. So I do find it fascinating when Democrats want to pick and choose what stories they want to stick up for, what illegal immigrants they want to talk about, because again, it is very difficult to find any Democrats stick up for this judge or this TDA member or anything that has to do with this story.
I hear these people chanting no justice, no peace. Let's not forget, this person, Mr. Ruiz, committed 2 crimes. He entered the United States illegally. Well, I don't know about the second crime. He's in court there today for domestic violence charge, okay? So it's not like he's there because he's an upstanding citizen. Somebody brought charges against the guy to show up in court for allegedly hitting somebody in some circumstance. So 2 strikes against the guy to begin with. The judge in this case knows what's going on, sees the ICE officials in the back, to Ellie's point, makes the conscious decision, I'm going to break the law. I'm going to break the law. And let me just make it clear. This president was elected overwhelmingly to seal the border and close down immigration loopholes. We had a poll recently, Harry put out, 60% of Americans today want to deport every one of the 11 million plus illegal aliens. They want to deport them. So for Trump, for the Trump administration politically, winner, winner, chicken dinner, every time you get somebody in this case, this judge, there's that, remember when the Colombian president had did the plane shuffle and then Trump put out the tweet with the face and the FAFO?
Now, I'm sure you guys heard about the judge who was arrested by the FBI, but when you go and look into that story, one thing you'll notice is you don't get the full facts of everything that's going on. You really only read about or hear about where the judge sent a man in a back room, sent him in the back door, thus the FBI arrested her. But the point that we are all missing, again, the media not giving us the full story, is that there were people in the courtroom expecting some sort of a finish to the court process or some sort of prosecution on the illegal immigrant. But we're missing that key fact. Everyone is focusing on the illegal immigrant. Again, mainly Democrats who are super, super upset about the judge, but don't really seem to care about the people who, have gotten hurt by the illegal immigrant. Now, anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys are seeing this is a really big problem, not only for Republicans, but also Democrats. We don't want to be misled. We want the full case of the story. We want the full context. It helps everyone out here. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. God bless, and we'll see you all later.